Hello, everyone. Welcome for this edition of presentation entitled Empowering Generative AI with Unified Data Integration. And the approach is a logical approach. So this could be something new to many of you. And in fact, when we talk about Gen AI, agentic, and so on, logical approach or the data aspect is something that is not seen in appropriately or as it required to be. So this session, I'm hoping then and wish to share a little bit more about how and what we should do with regards to the data when it comes to agentic AI, generative AI, and so on. So I'm Shanmuga Sunthar Muniandy, call me Shan for short. I'm with Denodo in the APAC region, looking after architectural consideration and discussion with customers, as well as technology evangelization for Denodo. With that, let's get started. So we know that AI, especially when we talk about Gen AI, agentic AI, it is transformational, right? And it's actually sending shockwaves and shockwaves, on how organizations, businesses can leverage them to better operate, and of course to make things easy in terms of collaborating with applications, data that you have in the organization, ensuring that we can actually do and perform our business better. However, this transformation, this initiative, this Gen AI shockwaves have got is challenges too. So let's explore a little bit more about what that means in detail. So yes, this is what we see in the news, in the business articles by analysts about the direction or the trajectory of Gen AI and agentic AI moving forward. We definitely see that yes, it is going to be improving and benefiting businesses if it is done right, implemented right. However, when we look at the details of it, we'll see a little bit different story. Right. By that, what I meant is, if I look at this particular article by a Boston Consulting Group that came up not long ago, they indicated very strongly about 66% of executives that was interviewed for this particular article actually said that they are not very satisfied with the outcome of the investments and the initiatives with regards to Gen AI and AI as a whole in the organization. So why is that? So that's a big question, right? So why is that? So when we explore further, I think this particular article from McKinsey, I guess, tells us the story very well. Of course, when they listed out the key challenges, there are many challenges that's out there, especially when it comes to engaging and implementing Gen AI applications and moving on with the initiatives. But one staggering challenge stands out. And this is the top three, by the way, right? 72% of organizational leaders who have been interviewed about this say that data, and specifically, talking about data for Gen AI, is actually a big challenge. And they need to do something about it. And in this same article, that when we go through the details, they actually talked about having the right foundation for our Gen AI, agentic AI applications and initiatives is going to be very, very key and crucial. So the question is, why are we at the juncture of embarking on this very interesting time leveraging Gen AI for businesses? We're having these data challenges. All right, so let's explore a little bit more about that. So when we look at some of the I guess trends that's actually happening in the industry, we definitely see that some of this we might have come across this. The first one we all know, right? Data is growing. You and me are the responsible parties of why this data is growing, right? So we know that, and we need to take note of that. We need to manage it. If I come to the second point here, or second graph there, 400 plus data systems, data sources that need to be accessed for data for any initiatives or applications. So that is something very interesting. What it means is that even though for the last maybe 30 close to 40 years now, we've actually been building and having data management strategies, data management architectures, and then of course that gave birth to data warehouses, data lakes, and now data marts and data lake houses on cloud, for example. Why are we still having these challenges of I need to go to, and this is average 400 plus applications to get my data for my business initiatives? So that's a big question that we need to answer. And while we are at that same question, I want to just go into the last graph that we can see. There is, we actually see the trend, very strong trend, that business users are actually now taking the lead in terms of developing and initiating applications and projects. So again, if I combine all this and keep in mind that these are the trends that's happening in the industry, and of course we want to superimpose that with the Gen AI agentic initiatives too. So what's going to happen if we do that? If you look at this as the requirement, right? So on top, you can actually see all the business use cases, business initiatives that might be happening in the organization, all the way from our traditional ones, which are your business intelligence, analytics, and to the newer ones, all right? For example, machine learning, as well as AI initiatives. And then we look at the top, bottom here, we actually have all the data sources. And this is the fact why we again, a while ago we talked about an average. We need to go get the data from more than 400 different applications. The reason is, yes, we have data in our data warehouses, data lakes, but at the point that we need a more unified, consolidated data enterprise wide, we still need to get the data from other applications, other systems, for the need of real-time data, real-time information for the necessary use cases that we're talking about. So with that as the use case, users will not have a choice but to go get the data from where it is residing. Now, that is going to create a lot of challenges, a lot of issues in terms of how data is being accessed, managed, leveraged for the purpose of different use cases and applications that we are talking about here. Now, this is the reason why, if you look at our use case like Gen AI and agentic AI use cases, the same problems and challenges exist in that way too. And it can be even more critical and crucial, especially when it comes to agentic AI and Gen AI use cases and applications, because the accuracy and the cleanliness and completeness of data is very, very crucial when we're talking about Gen AI applications and initiatives. So with that in mind, let's actually go and see what is actually happening if this is a situation in the actual implementation of Gen AI applications, right? So I'm actually taking a very simple example here. This is a LLM that I'm using for the purpose of answering a particular questions. As we all know, LLMs are trained with available data, and typically this will be the generally available data on the web and internet and so on. So that means they can answer very simple and very logical questions which are generally available information. Things like if I say, what is Malayan, right? The weavers in Singapore, you'll know, what that creature or the character means. But that will be actually very easily answered by LLM. However, if I ask a very specific business question, like in this context, I'm asking how many loans have been granted this week, and this could be a banking situation that I'm asking this question. Obviously, LLM will not have the answer because it is not trained with the data to start with, or I don't have access to that information that can help me to solve or give me the answers for that question. So how do we fix this problem? The way that we need to fix this problem is by allowing LLM to also have access to our corporate data where our information and knowledge resides. Now, when I ask LLM, with of course having this access to the data that has got the answers for the necessary question I'm asking, if I ask the same question, I will get the answer as, yeah, you have 234 loans granted last week. However, this diagram looks very simple. It is easily said than done. Why I'm saying so? So let's explore this a little bit further. If I take this and try to superimpose that into the actual steps or the orchestration, layer of, typically performed in how we actually engage this in a real life situation, this is one example. And I'm actually picking the RAG approach, being one of the most popular approaches when it comes to architecting Gen AI applications. So here, we go to the process of I'm actually asking a question, and typically it goes to a process of understanding what this question is all about, and those information will come from the vector DB. And using that, we go into generating the query, in this case, SQL required to get the data from wherever location that it resides. Now, this is where the challenge is. So if I just say where this problem lies, if I look at this red box that I'm drawing here, this is where the problem lies, because LLMs are very good in algorithms, right? They're very good in large language models, but they are not a data management tool. So that means there is a gap there. And of course, we all know that for LLMs, Gen AI, agentic, to talk about in a larger context, it requires, as we talked about earlier, unified, real-time, clean, complete data, which is also secured and governed. Now, if you actually take that requirement and put it into this rack implementation here, you can see that rack being, or in this case, the elements of getting the data from the source systems is not something that is optimally built into the LLMs. It will actually struggle to go get the data from the disparate sources that we have. Remember, if we bring back the example that we talked about earlier, at average, we are talking about 400 plus applications that we need to go and get the data from. So imagine in this case, there will be multiple SQLs being fired up to the different databases to get the data, and leave along the aspect of combining this data, making sure they are correct, and of course, on top of it, ensuring security and governance. Complicated, right? Of course, at the same time, we're also building the virtual DB, vector DB, in terms of vectorizing the information. Now, this is where the complexity lies, and this is why, if you look at, go back to the McKinsey report I talked about earlier, data management is actually fundamentally a part that is not looked at very carefully, which is actually leading into the failures, or the investment is not returning the necessary ROI that is expected. So, of course, now you all have in mind, the big question: how do then I solve this problem? So let's explore that a little bit further. So this is when a logical approach comes into picture to help implementation of Gen AI and LLMs are moving forward. So if you look at the same diagram that I showed you earlier, of course, it's very complicated, right? Links going all over the place, and the challenges that we talked about earlier: security, governance, cleanliness, and completeness. All this comes into picture. Why this is very, very important, right? If I just go back the analogy of how humans make decisions, we actually work in a graph or network based information. What that means is, if I'm looking at certain items, if I don't have necessary information to interpret what that I'm looking at, typically what will happen is our brain, the cognitive side of it, is actually working in a way of looking at our prior knowledge and experience to fill in the gap in terms of missing data. And of course, out comes the answers for what that particular item I'm looking for. At the same way, if I look at the computer aspect of how data is being processed, it is, of course, looking at the digital representation of what we are looking at. In this case, it can be business challenges, business use cases like fraud management. It could be risk management if you're talking about banking scenarios. If you're looking at manufacturing, maybe it could be supply chain, for example. If you're looking at telco, it could be customer management, right? How do we engage customers better? Now, if I don't have complete information, this is when it actually leads into biasness, leads into hallucinations and incomplete information and error in terms of processing the data. And that is why the information that we are providing in this case to any use cases that we have, either the older ones or the newer, more innovative ones like the Gen AI and AI, is very, very crucial. So it is very important for us to consider that, importantly, in our architecture when it comes to Gen AI and agentic AI implementation. So simply put, your Gen AI initiative or agentic AI initiative is as good as the data that you're going to be providing to them. Now, if this is the situation, how do we go about fixing this? Imagine if I have a capability or opportunity for me to streamline this data, which I can be, unifying it and making sure that it's agile, making sure that data is available when I need it. It is also trusted, I can ensure security and governance is on top of it. And of course, it actually gives me real-time data when I need. Now, all this, if I can do it without the need to copy data one more time, right? For example, in the RAG situation now, we actually copying data into the vector DB, which is not necessarily the best way moving forward. Or we actually put it into data warehouse and data lakes. Why not I actually do it more logically? What that means is applying the context of logical data strategy to be the fabric for our Gen AI implementation. So let's go into the middle red box here to understand what we are doing here that is going to be revolutionizing our way of engaging Gen AI initiatives. So this is a very simplified architecture of what did we do in Denodo. And of course, we do three things very, very optimally. One, we integrate, and these are all done logically, right? Leveraging the power of data virtualization. So when we integrate, we actually get the metadata information from different systems that we need to talk to. In this case, that we need to integrate to, which includes the API integration as well. So obviously, when the metadata comes in, we now go to the second process, which is the manage. And the manage, we then use the metadata that we have to model the information, model the data logically to create data products. And this is what we're going to be then leveraging for the purpose of different use case that we talked about earlier. Then comes the part of delivering this information for different tools and use cases and applications. Of course, SQL can be the common ones, but of course now we support Aeroflight SQL as well, as many of the analytics use cases are leveraging that for the performance. Now, many of the applications can leverage API, as we said here, right? It's basically out of the box from Denodo's capabilities. And moving on, of course, as we are speaking about in this particular topic, AI and of course, Gen AI initiatives. That is something that is integrally part of Denodo's capabilities to allow that to be leveraged for data purposes, which is delivered by Denodo as the logical data platform. Now, there are many capabilities that comes along with it. You can see the 6 boxes at the right side and left side of the box, which include security, governance, active metadata capabilities, and ensuring the data is represented in some service manner so that it's actually leveraged and used by any community, especially business community in the organization. Now, having said that, if this is the fabric, and if I then bring this context of fabric, which is logical, right? I do not need to copy the data one more time. It is secured, it's unified, it's real time. And on top of it, it's actually very, very agile in terms of delivering data as per the needs that keep on changing. I then bring this context to how do then I improvise or optimize the RAG implementation. This is how it's going to look like, right? So what's different in this diagram is that the orchestration starts, right? Of course, it goes through the vector DB to understand the context. And of course, after understanding context where the data is coming from, now the SQL are being generated so that we can actually get the data. Now, instead of now RAG going into the different systems, the silos that we talk about where the data is residing, I now let the Denodo handle the data requests, in this case, data delivery. Obviously, Denodo becomes the logical data fabric that allows data to be actually delivered in a most cohesive way, most optimal way, most secured way for the rest of the activities that to take place. Obviously, one query back to Denodo, data comes in and it goes into LLM and the answer comes out, right? So in a nutshell, it actually be one central location for data, governed, secured for real-time data within the logical data fabric architecture for your rack. And of course, to extend it further, we actually integrate well with all the common and popular AI services that's available out there, right? Either OpenAI, NVIDIA, Vertex, and Bedrock. And of course, this particular integration, as we speak, is actually being extended, right? Now, what we have actually done further in Denodo is that we sort of package this into a more interesting AI SDK. Like, for example, the whole sequence of activity that we saw earlier, I can now implement it as AI SDK for the purpose of data needs. So in actual sense, you can actually see this as almost like an agent, but this is an extendable agent because the data needs and data requirement can be agile. depending on the use case that we're talking about. And this AI SDK is something that's going to be agile moving forward with the requirement. And all this is done in a fabric manner, logical fabric manner, which means I do not need to copy data one more time. I do not need to physically go into each and every systems for me to get the data. I will let Denodo to handle the data side of the equation for my LLM implementation. All right. Now, I want to just switch gear quickly to look at some of the use cases where customers have actually been very, very successfully implemented Denodo for the purpose of their data. I want to talk something that is very close to our heart, IDX in Indonesia. We know they are dealing with very sensitive data, and of course, they also need to deliver information in real time, right time for the different stakeholders. And of course, before they implemented Denodo, this has been done in a very traditional way, meaning they need to get the data, they actually package it into a flat file, and then they send these files over. And we know that that can be very complicated. It can actually lead into data governance, data compliance issues, and also the time taken into creating the files, and it is not optimal. So IDX looked around, and luckily they found Denodo, and the way that they actually implemented it by leveraging Denodo for the IMDS implementation. All that happens now is that one central layer for data consolidation, unification of data logically, and that allowed them to actually expose the data in API ways for whatever use case that they have. This is ensuring what security governance, and also ensuring agility of delivering data as and when we need it by the stakeholders when they need it. And every time they hit the button to get the data, they get the most updated real-time information governed, for the use cases. Very interesting use case for us at IDX. If I just sort of look at some other use cases, this is really the AI use cases that we have, and of course there are many more, but I'm just highlighting a few because of the different permutations that they use the data for. Alex Forbes is in a financial institution, and of course, we know that when they deal with data, especially this is pension fund management, they need to be optimal in terms of leveraging data, not only necessarily using the data that's available, generally and openly in the internet, but they were struggling with incorporating the corporate data as part of the engagement point for the chatbot that they created, the AI chatbot that they created. And they actually then looked at AI SDK from Denodo. That is now becomes very seamlessly integrated in terms of getting the real-time data consolidated, corporate data consolidated in a trustworthy manner and a secure manner for the Gen AI implementation. Moving on, Perkins Coils is an organization in a legal industry, legal business. And you can imagine that besides the structured data, they have actually a lot of unstructured data in terms of the law engagement that they do. And they were struggling with, of course, combining and unifying this data for the integrated AI application that they created. And luckily, and thanks to AI SDK that we provided them, it is actually allowed them to not only consolidate, most importantly, a role-based access control, which is the security and governance, which is key for them, allowed to be implemented. If I move on to Festo, very large, very well-known manufacturing organization, they're dealing with how can they provide more productive AI capabilities for the business, in this case the users in the organization. And of course they went to create knowledge based chatbots, allowing them to have a skill zone for each of the employees to go into get more information, optimal information and detail for them to make decision, also to do a lot of more other things like design and many other things, supply chain and so on. So they were struggling on getting the corporate information embedded as part of the Gen AI implementation, and they were looking at options of what they can do. Luckily, AI SDK come to the help, and they actually now can collaborate, external data with the local data, which is the corporate data, and of course ensure that the data is optimally secure before they can actually leverage that and expose that to the users for them to make effective decision. Again, very successful use case with Festo. And there are many other use cases like this that is allowed and enabled by the two capabilities that we talked about earlier. One, allowing the logical data fabric for AI initiatives and agentic use cases. as well as the AI SDK from Denodo, allowing users to move forward strongly by leveraging optimally the data in the corporate as well as external data. Now, with that, just sort of summarizing what we talked about, we know that AI, is transformational in our businesses, but we need to take care of the data aspect very importantly, right? So, Denodo help organization to leverage the capabilities that we have that we talked about earlier to ease the data management aspect by creating the robust foundation for Gen AI initiatives, which is optimal, agile, trusted, secure, and enabling organization to move ahead with their AI initiatives and uh, applications very, very strongly. Now, as next steps, I have some interesting news for you. We actually just recently launched what we call a Gen AI Hackathon Challenge for 2025. Now, this is actually very interesting because organization can leverage the technology that is shared a while ago, as part of the hackathon to actually enable your business use cases, which are Gen AI use cases, right? Now, the interesting thing is this. Of course, this is a hackathon, of course, competition. The winners, and we're going to be selecting multiple winners, by the way, will actually get 1 year worth of the Denodo platform and the application that we talked about for them to engage and use that for the purpose of their and Gen AI and agentic AI use cases. Very interesting, and I'm actually encouraging every one of you to really take advantage of this Gen AI hackathon for the benefit, because you get 1 year worth of Denodo technology for really embarking on your AI journey and initiatives. Second one, if you are interested to play around with it now, right, because you actually see how exciting the technology is, that please use this QR code to just come into the environment, download, or even actually this is actually can be done, in the platform of your choice. Leverage that for the purpose of playing around. Is actually there's a guided approach that is available. Play around with the tool, understand the capabilities, and enjoy. All right. So with that, I want to thank you everyone for listening in. I'm Shanmuga Sunthar, Shan for short, signing off. If you have any questions, do drop us a note. I've got the email ID there. And of course, do visit it as denodo.com for rest of the information that you might be interested in there. A lot of resources available. With that,